Hello lovely humans, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is one of the most highly requested videos I think I've ever had. Now, of course, I think a lot of what's happening out there in the world right now is really inspiring this line of thought, but also it's not something that's entirely new. Today, we are going to talk about elopements. So without further ado, let's just jump right on into it. We need a quick disclaimer in here. I'm not encouraging anyone to break any sort of social distancing rules, laws, or regulations, okay? Y'all have been asking for an elopement video. Here it is. I know a lot of people are considering an elopement or something along these lines based on what the landscape of life has looked like for the last however many weeks and what it could potentially look like moving forward. Please, please, please follow the suggestions and guidelines of your local government or our federal government. This video is intended to be evergreen content. So if someone clicks on this video a year from now, my hope is that this will be extremely helpful for them if they're entertaining the idea of an elopement. We do touch on a little bit of what's happening right now and why people might be choosing it, but I'm not telling anybody to break the rules or break the law, okay? Okay, now back to the video. So first of all, what is an elopement? Because for a very, very long time, the idea of an elopement was that you and your honey went off, skipped off, went to a place like Vegas and got hitched without telling anybody. Now the term elopement is really moving away from that general idea. I'm sure you could still have that kind of event and describe it as an elopement, but what we're seeing these days is a very, very different trend. Elopements now are considered to be a planned, intimate affair. And it's where you and your spouse-to-be get together with a limited number of people and choose to have a small wedding ceremony. This can be done in a destination location. This can be done where you go on a really long hike and then you get married on a mountaintop with gorgeous backdrops. Or it could be something that's planned with a few family members and friends. But for the most part, it is a very, very pared down version of what a wedding could look like. You don't see high guest counts, you don't see a whole lot of vendors being involved, and it also can cost a lot less. You can either have it in your own backyard or you can go super, super far away and take advantage of beautiful photo opportunities. And this can have some sort of meal afterwards, but typically it's more focused on having an intimate ceremony in a cool location instead of having a grand party with a bunch of people invited. You can still elope and have a large reception afterwards at a later date. And this, I think, is what is inspiring most people right now to kind of look into this, given the current landscape of what's happening in the world. I'm not going to say any names because I don't want to be demonetized again. But you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, why would someone choose an elopement over a larger wedding celebration? There are plenty of reasons why this could be a totally viable option no matter what is happening in the world. And there are some wonderful reasons to choose an elopement over a larger event. Because it's so much smaller, you can be so much more adventurous with it. You can pick a more interesting location, you're really more flexible. Because it's less people, you can move around a lot more easily than it would be to move with 50 people, 75 people, 100, 150 people. It just creates more opportunities to get out there and try something different because you're not limited by the amount of people that you have. Second, it's a lot cheaper. If your budget is $15,000 and you want to invite 100 people, that money is going to be very, very quickly spoken for. I did do a video about the number one thing that's killing your budget. You guys have heard me talk about it before. I'm going to link it up here. But to summarize the whole point of that video, weddings are more expensive based on the amount of people that you invite to attend. So if you're doing something small with a few family members and friends, and you're efficient and a photographer, you can do so many more fun things with those funds instead of paying for plates, everyone's meals, everyone's drinks. You have more room to play around with that. Which means instead of spending $10,000 on dinner for a bunch of people, you can then spend $3,000 on a photographer, $3,000 on a videographer, and then a small dinner afterwards. You can get a killer outfit, you can still do hair and makeup, you can still have what feels like a traditional event, just with a lot less people, and then really indulge in the areas that are important to you. Another reason to choose an elopement is because of the privacy and the intimacy of it. If you are a more introverted person and the idea of spending an entire day surrounded by 150 people stresses you out, then perhaps an elopement is a great option for you. I know that there's going to be some family opinions that are worked into there. I know that it's not always like the easiest decision if you feel like there's societal pressures for you to have a big event. But if it's not your thing, then it's not your thing. Like, don't get me wrong. I know everything that I'm saying is, it sounds like I'm wedding shaming. I'm not. Y'all know I literally have an entire channel about giant events, okay? Like, I love this stuff, but that doesn't mean it's for everybody. Elopements also provide flexibility that literally no other wedding type event can have. Like I was saying earlier, you can go wander around and take photos in radical locations. You're also not limited by venue rental hours. If you're up on a cliff or you're walking on a beach, the only thing you're limited by is your photographer's hours and the amount of time that you have your officiant for. But once your ceremony's done, it's not like you need your officiant for much longer. If you have a photographer for 4 hours, that's completely different for an elopement than it is for a full wedding event. 4 hours with a photographer for a full wedding event, like that is really, really difficult to pull off. I have done it. It was very hard. I'm not saying it's impossible, but that means you have to be very, very tight with your timeline. If it's just you two and your photographer, 4 hours all of a sudden means so much more because you're not beholden to any of the traditions or any of the timeline regulations that you would typically experience with a formal wedding. Okay, so we talked about what it is and why you might be interested in doing it. Now let's talk about how you might actually pull this off. First of all, you're going to want to decide if you want to do an elopement package with a couple of vendors or if you want to create something custom for yourself. There are plenty of wedding planners out there who specialize in elopements. I personally am not one of them. I have never performed an elopement ever, although I did just get an inquiry for one in Paris. And I'm low-key freaking out about it. I can't. But enough about me. My freak out in Paris. Okay, let's move on. If you are choosing to do a package, it's important to select vendors from the area that you want to have it in. I know a lot of us obviously aren't traveling these days, but let's talk about planning ahead. If you are going to elope to a destination location, it is smart to pick vendors from that area or who are familiar with that area, whether that's a wedding coordinator or planner or a photographer and videographer. Especially in locations that you're completely unfamiliar with, you're going to want someone who knows both the physical landscape, so they can talk to you about where you can actually have your small ceremony, and the wedding landscape. What does it look like over there? What tips do they have for this location in regards to the weather, in regards to how far it is from civilization? How long will you have to hike to be able to get to this spot? You're going to want to find someone who's familiar with all those things because you're not going to want to figure that out on your actual elopement wedding day. So figure out if you want a package or if you want to do something custom. Find vendors who are familiar with that area. And then I kind of skipped over this one, but obviously you're going to want to pick a location. I have seen a little bit recently of people doing more backyard style elopements, obviously, and that is still a viable option moving forward. Again, it doesn't have to be anything giant. And you don't have to go on a hike if you want to have an elopement. And you don't have to necessarily be an adventurous person to want to have an elopement as well. It can be local. You don't have to go super far to do this. But if you are doing a more destination type elopement, then it would behoove you to do a bunch of research and find, again, vendors in that area to help you make educated decisions. The next thing you're going to want to figure out is the amount of guests you want to have. Do you want it to be just you and your honey, the officiant, and the photographer? Or do you want to go a little bit bigger than that and have a couple family members and a couple friends? An elopement isn't necessarily defined by the amount of people you invite, but typically it's not a very, very large guest count. Because elopements have this more adventurous type feel to them, oftentimes that means you're not following a typical timeline and you're off gallivanting with your photographer to get all of those amazing shots. The next thing you're going to need to figure out is obviously the legality of all of it. Like, how are you actually signing your marriage license? If it is local, there's probably not going to be too many issues with making that happen, but please do bear in mind you do need to research if you have to have an officiant present and or witnesses present. Otherwise, your marriage license, it's not valid. If you are doing your elopement in another country or another state, then you will, again, need to do your own research. The reason I'm being super vague about this, by the way, is it would take way too long for me to figure out like state-by-state regulations because every place is pretty different. So I do recommend if you are going to do this, you got to figure out how to make it legal. And then the last thing you can do, should you choose to, is to set up a party to have later with all of your family and friends. This could be super reminiscent of a typical reception where you just bring everybody in, eat some dinner, have some toast, and dance on the dance floor. It could be a lot more simple. It could be a restaurant style reception where you all just get together and have a great meal, or it could be a backyard event where you just invite everyone over to celebrate the fact that you guys got married. Or after an elopement, even if you're already legally married, you can still have a full wedding day. And I say this because a lot of people who are choosing elopements or choosing a small intimate ceremony right now is because they have to. It's because there isn't another option for them. There's a lot of logistical things that are affecting people's lives right now. So if you want to, you can still legally get married and have something small and cool and really enjoy it, and then have a larger party later on down the line. So if an elopement was not your first choice, if it wasn't exactly what you signed up for, and you're just doing it because it's literally the only option you have right now, you can still have a full wedding day later, should you choose to. Whew! Okay, that was like a lot of information. Basically, elopements are rad. And then the last 10 years, they've really pulled away from getting married by an Elvis impersonator on the strip of Las Vegas and turned into this beautiful, wonderful concept of celebrating your love story in an intimate and oftentimes adventurous way. I know it's a tough time for a lot of us right now. I do. It's rough. And it's not my intent to minimize any of that. This also doesn't rob you of your beautiful wedding day that you had planned. Because at the end of the day, you found your favorite person. Your favorite person who you want to spend the rest of your life with. So whether an elopement is something you've been thinking about or planning on doing, there's obviously a whole lot of merits to it. Or you're here because you don't have any other options and you're just looking for a little bit of clarity on how to move forward with this. They're a great option and a great way to legally and beautifully celebrate your love story. So that's all we have for today, folks. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope this video provides a little bit of encouragement for you guys. There are so many great merits to doing an elopement. I'm still going to be a big fan of big weddings. Like, they're just rad. Clearly, I'm in this industry for a reason. But more and more, I'm starting to appreciate and understand and really love elopements. If you haven't done so already, like this video because you liked the video and subscribe to this channel for more tips and tricks for the modern day bride. And until next week, bye guys.